hey sisters, this is Donna Parteau here, welcoming you to day 65 of our 90-day renewal in spirit, soul, and body. You know, a church recently asked me if I would do a message on Judges chapter 4, and the star of chapter 4, if you will, is Deborah. Deborah was a ruler and judge over Israel, leader, just an amazing woman, well known, one of the most famous. But you know what caught my attention in Judges chapter 4 was the story of another woman, not very well known. Her name was Jael. And Jael was just I would say a housewife, but she lived in a tent. So she was a tent wife. She was a nomad. They moved from place to place. And the most interesting thing to know about Jael is this. Her husband, whose name was Heber, was one of the Kenites. Kenites were descendants of Moses' in-laws. So they were Moses' in-laws. So, you know, they were kind of married into the family of God, but they walked away. They walked away from the Israelites. And it says that Heber and the Kenites pitched their tents among the enemies of God. I think that's really kind of interesting, because I wonder how many women are, you know, watching this right now. And maybe your husband's like Heber the Kenite. Maybe your husband was once active in church and part of the family of God, but maybe something happened that disillusioned him. This happens so often. He got disillusioned with the church, or maybe he just became busy, and now you feel like your husband has pitched his tent among the enemies. He's not part of the family of God anymore. And maybe you think, well, how can I be the woman that I want to be when my husband is pitching his tent among the enemies of God? Now, listen, this is so amazing. The Bible specifically tells us this battle with God's people and the enemies of God's people begins to rage. And it says that the top enemy, a guy named Sisera, comes to Jael's tent because he was on friendly terms with her husband and his family. Wow. The enemy specifically targeted her tent, her house, because of a decision made by her family members. And I wonder how many women can relate to that. Maybe you even have children or grown children, and they're making choices, and you feel like, wow, I feel like I'm living with the enemy. I feel like the enemy has come to my house now. Maybe you've even had the police knock at your door. Sisters, I'm living in the real world because of decisions that people in your family have made. That was Jael. And I'm sure it was tempting for Jael to say, how can I be used by God? I'll never be like Deborah, because I'm here with these people making bad choices, living among the enemies of God, not in the center of God's will. But guess what? Guess what? God used her in such a mighty way. When the enemy came to her tent, she did two things. First of all, she covered him, just like we need to cover the enemy and the work of the enemy with the blood of Jesus. And then the second thing she did was say, hey, what tools do I have on hand? What am I skilled at doing that I can use to defeat this enemy who's come into my home, into my tent? And she picked up a hammer and a tent peg, because that's what she was used to doing. She was a nomad's wife. One thing she could do was hammer a tent peg. She'd been doing it all her life. And she picked that up, and it says that it's kind of gruesome, but she took that tent peg and she hammered it through the head of Sisera, the enemy of God's people. I was thinking, actually, I had taught on this at the teleseminar for the 90-day renewal, and one of the women shared, that she felt exactly like Jael, that she was under siege. She thought, well, what two weapons do I have in my hands? And God said, you have prayer and you have fasting. And sisters, she defeated the enemy, and it's so significant. The Bible tells us that they were at war for 20 years up until the day that Jael rose up in her own tent and said to the enemy, no, you cannot come in here and wreak havoc in my home. I'm going to stand up to you. I'm not going to be afraid of you. I'm going to fight you with the weapons that I have in my hand. And then after she stood up, it says that there was peace in the land for 40 years. Her decision, her bravery, her courage in the face of the enemy had far-reaching impact, not just for her own household, but for the nation. And so, sisters, you never know. If you rise up in your own home against the works of the enemy, rise up, cover it with the blood of Jesus, rise up with prayer, rise up with fasting, rise up with worship, rise up with whatever God has given you, and defeat that enemy. You have no idea how far-reaching the impact of your courage might just be, you might just become like a JL. Never as famous as Deborah, but powerful and powerfully used by God. Think about it. That's it for today. I'm Donna Partent with your 90-day renewal in spirit, soul, and body.